I'm Graham and welcome to the GT Woodshop. In this video I'm going to be using the Incra Positioner system on a router table to make a decorative keepsake box with corner post dovetails. Incra's approach to cutting dovetails is completely different from any other I've come across. We won't need a chisel or a handsaw, and we won't need any templates as such, just the LS Positioner and a router table. Just one other thing before we move on, I've got an extra special assistant in the workshop with me at the moment. See if I can get him on camera. He's a little camera shy. There he is. Snobbish the world snobbish. And by the marvels of modern technology, here we are over at the router table. And here is the Incra LS Positioner. The Incra system comprises of the positioner base, the sliding carriage, the fence and the right angled fixture connected to your preferred router table. If you're unfamiliar with the Incra system, I think you'll be delighted with the chisel-free approach to cutting dovetails. The system comes with the items that I've just outlined, depending on which version of the kit you buy, but all versions of the kit come with a set of templates for you to choose the type of dovetail pattern that you'd like to cut, along with a very detailed step-by-step guide on how to cut the type of joint that you're after. I've got it open to the half-blind dovetail page, but it also allows you to cut box joints through dovetails, double dovetails and on and on. So that's the brief introduction to the Incra system that I'll be using to make these decorative joints on our keepsake box. So let's get started. So here's the timber I've selected for this project. A lovely gnarly old piece of ash and a nice piece of mahogany for the contrasting corner posts. We'll get it milled down and then we'll move back over to the router table and we'll start cutting the joints. Right, so we're back at the router table and we've got all of our stock now prepared and ready for use. Sides and ends, slightly thicker piece for the corner posts, and I'll go through a bit later on why that's a little thicker. And I've got two extra pieces of scrap that I've also milled down to size that I can use for the setup routine. So before we get into the setup routine, a couple of important points to note. It's really important with the Incra system that the timber you're going to be using for your project is exactly the same thickness and width. If not, we're going to get undesirable results. Two other critical points about the setup, and although the book does mention it, I feel it could go into, or not go into, I feel the book could make put a little more emphasis on how important these 2 points are. So point number one is height of cut. If you don't get the router bit at the perfect height for the router bit that you're using, then your joints are either going to be too snug or too loose. And we don't want either one of those, so it really is worth taking the extra time to get the height setting absolutely perfect, and that'll be the first one that we do in a tick. Secondly, we've then got center cut, so finding the exact dead center of the size of stock that you've chosen for your project. And again, that one is as critical as the height setting. With the center cut, if you get that slightly off even, then when you come to fit your finished pieces together, you're going to end up with, slightly exaggerated obviously, but you're going to end up with a difference in finish, which again would be nothing less than undesirable. So let's just have a quick look through the book and see what the master reference guide says. That's box joints. Let me see if I can find the right page. There we go. So half blind dovetails is what we're going to be cutting, even though we're going to end up with a corner post dovetail. They're actually half blind dovetails on both sides, which is a bit of a contradiction in terms. In order to do this, the reference guide tells us that we should choose the approximate size of stock we want, and then we should reference the template guides to choose the style of joinery that we want, and the one that closely matches the stock size that we've chosen. So I've chosen this one, lovingly called MDovC. And let me make sure that you get this on the camera. So I've marked center point on my board, and you can see here it says suggested center cut is 10A. And what we're looking for is to make sure that when we line our center mark on our board up with 10A, that we get either the tails or the pins at a nice size, so that we've got a good shoulder, which I'm reasonably happy with. So once we've decided which one of the templates we're using, we then select the appropriate insert for our sliding rail. So you get one of these to match each one of the different styles of dovetail joint or box joint, finger box joint that you want to use. So I've got my MDovC already inserted. I've also got my dovetail bit already in the table. I'm sure you don't need to see either one of those. So let's get straight on to setting the height of cut. Okay, so we're ready to set depth of cut. Our template guide says initial setting of 7mm, and then depth of cut spacing of 22mm. So initial height 7mm is fairly self-explanatory. The 22mm spacing is based on setting your router fence to approximately centre of your router bit. It's not overly critical at this point, so that's about centre, iron down through the front of the fence. So I'll lock that there for a minute, and then I'm going to take my sliding scale at the back here and position it on the crosshair, and I'll try and zoom in on the ceiling camera to show you exactly what I'm doing. So I've got centre point of my router bit marked. I'll get the fence out of the way now and set the height of the router bit. So I'm going to use my little trend depth gauge. There we go. So that's the bit at 7mm above tabletop and locked off. So what we're going to do is get our fence back to the 0 position. I'm going to use the right angled jig. I'm going to take my 2 pieces of scrap, clamp them to the jig, then I'm going to pass them through to cut the first part, and then I'm going to move the fence back 22mm and I'm going to pass them through again. Okay, so that's our first pass with the rotor at the suggested depth of cut. And as you can see there you go, it's a little bit loose. So if you remember the phrase heighten to tighten, lower to loosen, so we want to raise our rotor bit by the amount of the gap. So I'll do that now and then we'll make another cut. There we go. Oops, bring it down a bit. So, set up for centre cut. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, centre cut is critically important, and in order to get the centre set, mark a position on your stalk in approximately the middle. Closer you can get, the better. Set your rotor bit so that its widest point is 90 degrees to the fence. Then line your stalk up with the centre of the rotor bit, close as you can get it by eye, and then bring your fence up to meet the stalk and lock it off. And what we're now going to do is, after we've chucked that on the floor, is we're going to use our right angle fixture. We're going to pass this piece across the bit, and then we're going to turn it round and pass it across again so that we can find how far off we are. Okay, so I've got my piece of test stock that's exactly the same width as the timber that I'm going to use, clamped to my right angle fence, back and board behind to reduce tear out. And as I said, we're going to pass across once, then we're going to turn the board 180 degrees and pass across again. Now, if you heard that, there was the slightest touch of the rotor bit on the timber after we turned it. So I just need to dial that out and then do the cut again, and make sure when I turn it 180 degrees and pass it through again, it doesn't strike the side. So hopefully you could hear over the sound of the dust extractor that when we flipped 180 and passed back over again, there was the merest touch of the rotor bit on the timber. So I'm really happy with our positioning for centre of board. Well, that's all of our setup complete. We've set depth of cut, we've set centre on the board, we've aligned all of our templates, and we're ready to actually start working on our box. Unfortunately for this video, I'm afraid we've run out of time. My sincere apologies. I didn't realise it was going to take quite so long, but I think the level of detail is important to get across to you the benefits of using the Incra system. So I hope you've liked this video. If you have, please hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and click on the little bell icon so that you know when I release the second part of this video. Thanks for watching. See you in part 2.